Yeah.
There you are.
Good morning. It's 8:30. We'll call the Sawyer County Finance Committee meeting to order. Ask the clerk to call a roll, please.
Ron Kinsley.
Here.
John Righeimer.
Here.
Stacy Hessel. Here. Tom Duffy.
Here.
Dale Schluter. We have 4.
Let the record indicate we have a quorum. Please rise to the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation.
Thank you. Number 4, certification compliance open meeting laws.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. All the board members have a new voting clicker. Lynn has a little test for us. How to use them. Lynn, please.
Okay, I'm pulling up. I'm going to share my screen. And what we're going to do is use it for roll call votes, but we're going to let you get a test on it at this point in time. So I have a question that I'm going to open and you're going to answer yeses. You're going to push the green button, and for no, you're going to push your red button. And then you're going to push abstain is the yellow. So the question is that 6 million Americans have claimed to be abducted by aliens, yes or no? So you have to push green for yes and red for no. Oh, I got to open the vote. Sorry about that. Okay, it's ready. And when you're all in, when Tom's in, we can close the vote. Go ahead, Tom, you're ready. Okay. And the answer is yes. So Tom Duffy wins the prize. 6 million Americans have claimed to be abducted by aliens. And that's how it works. That's as easy as it is. So
Thank you.
I'll stop sharing my screen.
Anybody have any questions on that regarding that? Pretty simple. Number 5, meeting agenda. The agenda is set. Go to number 6, public comment. We have a few people who'd like to speak to the finance committee. We'll start with Molly from the Hayward Library, please.
I'm Molly Lane Jones from Sherman and Ruth Weiss Community Library. And most of you would have received some of the information in a little packet. It just has a plain cover, and then the second group looks like this. And I have, did anybody not get one? I have an extra over here.
There's extras here.
Yeah, this is what I'm going to discuss first, but then we have a second sheet here. Thank you. So what I wanted to go over real quickly, some of the Economic Development Committee has heard some of this, but not the rest of the county board. So first of all, of course, I want to thank you for all the years that the county has been funding us, and it's been happening since I came here in 1995, and we are amazingly grateful. And libraries are the cornerstones of our communities, and they are crucial to our reading and literary cultures and vital to the health of democracy and society. And I'm going to kind of go through this top sheet with you because it just shows how fluid budgets need to be and how many changes can happen. So for 2022, the county funded us at $210,000. For 2023, we used last year's $210,000 in determining our budget, as it was the same amount as last year. We also anticipated that our donor from last year would again provide a match per se at $10,000. So using last year's funding, we determined that for 2023, the library itself has to raise $194,974 on our own to meet our budget. And the funds the library must raise, the anticipated $210,000 from the county, plus the $10,000 anticipated matching donations comes out to $394,974, which is what our budgeted expenses are. And when we submitted the budget to the county, we found out, or this is right after, that a donor who had given $15,000 to the library each year since 1998 had passed away. So that was a hurt to us. And in the last month, we were told that the county plans to cut our funding by 10,000 from last year. And soon after that, we did, because I explained the story to some of my former board presidents, they donated $20,000, which was unexpected. And even with this generous donation, the library will still face a shortfall. And at the time I was doing this last night, it was 15,000 in revenues. Actually, I found out late yesterday that because of the hit that the Hayward Library Foundation is taking on their endowment fund, they determined that next year they'll only be able to donate 14,000, not the 19,000 that they have been donating for the past 2 years. So that leaves us with an additional loss of $5,000. Yet our library is the only entity that the county proposes to cut in 2023. And I very respectfully ask that under the circumstances that you please vote to reinstate the $10,000 as you provided last year. And thank you very much.
Ann Larson, please.
Sorry. Hi, my name's Ann Larson. I'm the Assistant Director and Program Coordinator at the Sherman and Ruth White's Community Library. Wanted to also thank you, sorry, my love monsters. Thank you for providing financial support to the library throughout the years. We've been told that it's been recommended that the 10,000 be cut from our 2023 requested amount, as Molly had said. And $10,000 is a very large amount for the library. If the library wouldn't receive the requested $210,000, cuts, of course, would have to be made. Unfortunately, these cuts will have to be made in our largest line items, which of course is staff salary. And what that means is that the library would have to close 1 day per week and let a staff member go. Shortage in money staff would also mean decreasing or eliminating on some of our most popular items and activities that you see here, which people enjoy the most. And those would be the Take and Makes and our Story Walk books, which involve staff time and some funding. These two items have been enjoyed by many throughout the community. The Take and Makes also give parents and caregivers a creative outlet and bonding time to do something with their child without having to use valuable free time to gather the supplies or find an idea. The Story Walk is enjoyed by both young and old, and very young children have even learned how to count and enjoy nature and the outdoors on the Story Walk. I respectfully hope that you will reinstate the $10,000 to the library for this library's funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
That is.
Linda Zimmer, please.
Linda Zilmer, 902 Holly Hill Lane, Edgewater, property owner and taxpayer. I am assuming you're not going to entertain questions during the budget presentations, but I have a number of questions, partially from the public hearing and the last county board meeting and what you'll be talking about today. One thing that was not clear is there's an exhibit that shows, it looks like an amount of fund balance, previous fund balance that's going to be used to balance this year's 2023 budget. I would like more of an explanation on that. Number two, generally during budget discussions, there has been an assumption set by the county board for the administrator to use regarding an percentage increase to employee wages. And that has not been discussed, so I would like to know for the budget purposes, I mean, there's always the actual increase that's granted later, but what is the percentage increase in employee wages that's being used in the exhibits that are presented? Number 3, the ambulance exhibit that has been shown to the county board and to the public is only the net amount of the above the levy limit amount that will be assessed to on property taxes. So there has been no discussion of what the actual ambulance operations are. What is the amount of accounts receivable outstanding in ambulance billings? What is the percentage amount and the amount of receivables expected to be collected in 2023? And then also, what is the amount that will be billed to the Washburn County towns that have Sawyer County ambulance service? They have traditionally been assessed at much less than Sawyer County towns. And then finally, when you get to the schedule of fees, which I think is item number 16, please further explain the amounts of increases for election costs. Those are going up. The amount assessed or the amount charged for water testing, there are some amounts going up and some going down. And then lastly, health services, reproductive health care. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Donna?
Hello, I'm Donna Nucky, Winter Public Library Director, 3416 W County Road W in Winter. I'm just here to ask you to approve what is allotted in the budget for the Winter Public Library. I won't go into a lot of details because I've shared this at other meetings as well as the budget hearing, our struggles with our recent renovation that we were required to do to keep the structural soundness of the library. But I am really happy with the services we're able to provide for the Winter area. We do serve 7 different municipalities as part of our library and offering programmings from young to old to full-time, part-time, and tourists. So I'm excited that libraries can service inclusive services to everyone, and that's not just for Winter, it's across all of your libraries in the county. So we do appreciate the funding that we get from the county. We are also, all of us also seek additional grants, donations, and other fundraising opportunities to help offset our budget. So please consider funding the libraries to their fullest.
Thank you. Karen?
Me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak today. I'm here, my name is Karen Milaseka, and I'm with Namaquagan Transit. And for 11 years, you know, I've not come to this county board to ask for a penny more in local match than 150. It's been 150,000 for over 11 years. And that shows good financial management. If I haven't had to ask anyone for a penny more in 11 years, think of all the work we do to keep it that way. Unfortunately, the economic climate has changed, and I can't make ends meet on the same 150,000. So I've asked for 25,000 more, which is actually leveraging money. It's not just dollar for dollar 25,000. That 25,000 allows us to leverage about 100,000 extra that we can get from the state and the feds, mostly the our regular federal transit program. And without having an increase, I can't keep up with the expenses of everything, basically. We were given some COVID funds, just like the counties were all, about 2 years ago, we're all given some COVID money. We didn't expand services in any way because we knew that's kind of one-time deal. We don't want to do something in perpetuity that's going to end. So what we did, if you drive by our facility today, you'll see some huge solar panels put up right next to our parking lot. And for something in perpetuity, we thought, well, if we put it into solar for the next 20, 30 years, it'll reduce our operating costs by our electric bill. Because we do have three-phase power and such, we do pay a hefty electric bill. So we utilize those funds that we were given instead of increasing a service that we're not going to be able to keep funding, to use it for a project that would actually help reduce our operational costs. Again, if you think about that, that's good financial management. I really truly think that was a good decision on our part, rather than expanding something we couldn't keep up with. So for the 25,000, at the last meeting, the public hearing, I believe it was at 5,000 or so. It's not, that won't be enough to cut it. It honestly won't. And for 11 years of not asking, I'm not saying we'd be rewarded for it, but I don't want that held against us that, well, you can make it that long, you can go a little longer. I actually can't. I can't keep up with the cost of insurances and everything. It's not like we increased wages and all kinds of things. We did enough to keep up with being able to have some employees, because it's actually getting really hard right now to have good employees. And all of our employees are all CDL, they all pass drug testing, background checks and stuff. It's just really hard to get employees and to maintain in this kind of an economic climate. So that 25,000 actually will help really put fuel in the vehicle, which has skyrocketed during the past year or two, and to help keep our wheels rolling. Because we do bring a lot of people into their jobs. We bring them to not only their jobs, but to their medical appointments. We bring the library, we bring them to this building for their health and human service needs. You know, I mean, just without having the transportation there, I think it really will affect a lot of folks in Sawyer County. So I really ask you to reconsider 25,000, the amount that we requested, in addition to the 150, to really help us keep it going. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Karen. Anybody else who would like to speak to the committee? Is there anybody virtual?
There's one virtual attendee, but they are not
Okay.
indicating anything to speak.
Thank you. Number 7, approve the minutes of the previous meeting of October 13th. Motion by Mr. Duffy, second by Ms. Hessel, to approve as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 8, presentation of 2021 audit. Are they coming to 9? Okay. Number 9, treasurer's report, treasurer's department update. Lynn, is JD available or?
She's gone.
Okay. Those are other people. If you're ready, we're ready for you. If you want to use the podium. Welcome to Sawyer County.
Yes. Thank you for having us here today. So I'm April Anderson, and this is Melissa Anderson from CLA, and we are here to present the 2021 audit reports to you guys. And so the full draft audit report was available, but we'll focus in on the executive audit summary like we have historically. And so was that available to everyone?
Just added.
Oh, you did. Okay, okay. Is it possible to bring it up on
Can you bring it up on the screen, Andy?
Yeah, just want to, if I start to, yeah. You know. He's pretty good with the IT.
testing them?
Well, I'll start off with some of the high level audit results that we have that will be on the first page that we look at here. And so the first item that we show is the audit opinion. And so the county's financial statements will be issuing an unmodified audit opinion on that. And so that is the highest opinion you can receive, and that's considered a clean opinion. So that means your financial statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles and all the governmental accounting standards that you have to follow as a governmental entity. As we do go through the audit, we are required to also identify and communicate to you any issues that we see in internal controls. And so we are reporting 3 material weaknesses, they're called, in internal controls. And these are very common. So we work with over 170 governmental entities in just Northwest Wisconsin. And we have these findings for most of them because of the size and makeup and nature of the entity. And so you shouldn't be overly concerned about them, but you need to be aware that they do exist and they are there. So the first one is limited segregation of duties. And that relates to in the different reporting or processing of financial transactions. So making journal entries, receiving disbursements, payroll. One person shouldn't necessarily have access to the different parts of that transactional process. They shouldn't be able to initiate the transaction. They shouldn't be the one reporting on it or reconciling it. And so again, due to the size of the entity and how many people you have involved in such processes, that's not necessarily cost effective or to be able to hire more people to separate some of those duties. But what you need to be aware of there is, looking at the processes and the controls that you have in place as far as being able to have a second review of things and that sort of thing. The second material weakness that we show is the material audit adjustments. And so, as I said, your financial statements are in accordance with all the general accepted or accounting principles and governmental accounting standards. But we do assist you with making sure that some of them are reported accordingly. So there are lots of rules and new regulations that are coming about, and you look to us to have that expertise and background to help you adjust some of the accounts accordingly. Then the very last one is annual financial reporting under GAAP. And so, as I said, your financial statements are in accordance, but you look to us to help draft the financials. So technically under auditing standards, management and governance are responsible for the financial statements. But again, you look to us to help provide that assistance in drafting the full report. Then the very last item there, you'll see that due to the amount of funding that you receive from federal grants, you are required to have what's called a single audit. So there's some compliance factors that come into that we have to look at. And as part of that, part of our audit, we do not have any issues to report to you there. If there are no questions on that piece, I'll just continue on. The next few pages are just, again, some formal required communications, kind of going over in more depth what I just summarized there. So we'll get into some of the actual numbers. On page 7 it is. And so here we'll start with the general fund. And similar to what we've seen in the past, we have 4 years of information so that you can kind of see how things may have trended over the last few years. Here in the general fund, you'll see we start with the balance sheet, your assets and your liabilities to get down to your fund balance. A lot of changes that might occur in the balance sheet might just be due to timing of activities from one year end to the next year end. You will see that your cash and investments did actually increase quite a bit there. And we'll get down more into that as far as how your fund balance changed, which was kind of an ultimate result of your cash going up there. In addition, here in the assets section, I'm not going to go over every line, but a couple bigger changes from last year that you'll see that your delinquent taxes receivable actually went down. And so, better on the collections, and then you had some tax deed sales and things like that. Which also related to your cash going up too, so you've done better on the collections there. The due from other funds line, you'll see that that increased quite a bit from 300,000 last year to over $1 million this year. And that is kind of cash flow deficits and other funds that the general fund is covering at the time being, at that moment in time, at the end of 2021. And so the highway fund had a $500,000 cash deficit. And then with your capital projects that started, there was a $400,000 cash deficit at the end of 21 until you issued the bonds for that project. Otherwise, as I said, when we get down a little bit, then the assets less your liabilities is your fund balance. And so that's where we kind of focus our time, because that is a true indication of the health of the fund and activities for the general fund. And so if you go down even just a little bit more, you'll see that your overall fund balance in the general fund increased $3 million in 2021. And so there were some variety of factors that caused that increase. Some notable ones is that your sales tax was about $650,000 over budget, about $400,000 higher than last year. And so again, with activities that occurred in 21 and things changing over the last couple of years, you were able to see an increase in that again in 21. Stumpage was up over budget about $300,000. I mentioned the tax deed sales as well was about $400,000. And then on the expense side, you had some expenses that came in under budget as far as the jail and ambulance, most notably, were about a combined $360,000 under budget. So with those different factors playing in, that is how you ended up with a $3 million addition to fund balance in the general fund. But what we do look at in fund balance, if you can just scroll up just a little bit so you can see the fund balance section, it's broken down into different categories. And so your overall fund balance at the end of the year was 10.9 million, but about 1.8 million of that was considered non-spendable. And so those are items sitting as assets, as like the delinquent taxes and prepaids that aren't available cash, or it's not readily available resources. And so those are kind of taken out of the overall fund balances being available. And then you have committed at the end of 2021, 1.3 million. And you'll see that's quite an increase from last year. That relates to fund balance applied in your budget. So when you're doing your 2022 budget, you needed to balance it by using some fund balance available. And that's what most of that is made up of. And then in your assigned balance, you'll see that that also increased quite a bit there, from 600,000 last year to 2.3 million in 2021. And there's different carryovers and items in there, but the most notable items that you have in that 2.3 million amount is 660,000 is set aside for sick type leave and the accumulated balances there. Then you also approved to set aside 1.3 million for the health and human services activities, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But that fund balance has gone down the last couple of years, so you're moving some funding over there for those activities. And then about 300,000 in the resource development fund for 2022 dam projects. You're going to move some resources over there for that purpose. So what that ultimately gets you down to then is that unassigned fund balance of the 5.4 million. And so that is where we that's what's considered available technically for what is needed for the county. And so what we look at there as a benchmark is that unassigned fund balance to your annual expenditures. And you'll see that that percentage is at 39.7%. So it increased a little bit from last year. And the county policy is to have that between 20 to 30%. Our general recommendation and like the GFOA general recommendation is about 25 to 33%. But with the counties that we do work with in Northwest Wisconsin, we actually do see it closer to about 35 to 40%. So you're kind of right within the range that we generally see that that unassigned fund balance. So, so that gives you enough set aside, so for those unforeseen things that may happen, or, for activities that come up that you want to be able to provide to the citizens of the county. So those were the highlights of the general fund. We'll move on then to the other reporting funds of the county. And we won't get into quite so much detail of each one, and we really won't actually hit on every one of them. But the next one is special revenue funds. And so those are considered self-sustaining funds where you have certain revenues coming in for certain expenditures and projects. And so here, the couple that I'm going to hit on are the top two, where I already mentioned the health and human services. And so what we're seeing here presented is the very ending fund balance each year. And so you'll see that the last couple of years, the fund balance has gone down. But as I said, you have set aside 1.3 million in the general fund to move over there for 2022. And then similar situation in the resource development, you've used some of that available funding the last couple of years for certain projects. And so you have assigned, again, 300,000 in the general fund to move over for particular purposes already, also in that fund.
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
On that, health and human services, special
Yeah.
revenue fund balance. Do you see that in other counties too, where that balance is falling?
Um,
I know that's due to out of county placements that we can't budget for. And
Yeah, exactly. The high costs that you have that aren't getting fully funded. A lot of counties actually bring that down to zero at the end of each year. So they'll either, if it's a positive year, the excess will be transferred back into the general fund. If it's a deficit, then the general fund. Yeah, so it is a similar kind of concept where you're kind of funding it then from available resources in the general fund. And we have seen that in the last couple of years where the high costs that, counties just cannot necessarily keep up with it with just the funding coming in specifically through those sources. So yes, it is a very common thing that we are seeing. And then the only other one I kind of wanted to hit on here was in the middle of the page, there is the ARPA funding. So I just wanted to kind of mention that as you did receive 1.6 million in 2021. You'll see that the fund balance is zero because how that's reported is that it's cash coming in and then there's an offsetting liability until you actually recognize and spend those funds. So in 2021, 206,000 was spent and recognized as revenue, but that fund balance is showing as zero because it's sitting there as cash and an offsetting liability. Then the next funds that the county has is a debt service fund. And so that is specifically for that purpose of setting aside the necessary funding to pay for your principal and interest payments on debt each year. And so usually there's a pretty minimal balance in this type of fund because you're only putting away or levying for the certain amount that you need. And so out of this fund during the year, though, you did levy enough to pay for the required principal of about 740,000 that was paid and interest of about 35,000 that was paid on your debt during the year. The next type of fund that is reported is capital projects funds. And so here, these will kind of vary from year to year because of the fact that usually it's debt that's issued and then it's spent down as the projects occur. And so you'll see that towards the bottom of the section where most of the activity has occurred now the last couple of years with debt being issued in the 2021 capital projects. You had about 990,000 issued last year. Some of that was spent down in 2021 then. And then at the end of this in 2021, you issued about 1.3 million for the other capital projects and equipment that are needed. And then the very last item there is where I mentioned the cash deficit in the courthouse edition fund, which obviously there'll be 8 million issued in there next year that you'll be showing with the spend down of that as the project proceeds. So then the next item, number 5, is enterprise funds. And so here is where your highway activity is reported. And so we show a little bit more activity here, but I'm not gonna get into every line, but similar to the general fund, we show your assets and your liabilities and then get down to what your net position is. And so you'll see here, as I said, there's at the end of the year, minimal cash in this fund. And this is kind of a common occurrence that we've seen in a lot of the counties too, where the highway cash has been kind of depleted down to a minimal amount. And so then you'll see that due from other governments amount has increased from about 350,000 last year to 770,000 because of that cash deficit loan from the general funds. So then you will see that the overall change in net position for the highway fund was a deficit of 211,000. So that means your expenditures exceeded your revenues by that much. However, a little bit of a benchmark that we look at here, you'll see that current ratio. And so that is your current assets, your available cash and soon to be collected receivables compared to your current liabilities. And you want that to be at least a 1-to-1 ratio. So you will see that you are at 2.7 there. So even though you don't necessarily have the available cash at year end, you do have a big amount due from the state that is, expected to come in shortly after year end that is able to cover your current liabilities and payables. The very last type of fund that is reported then is the internal service funds. And this is for activities that is for services provided internally to like different departments of the county. And so generally there's, not much of a net position or balance here. And because what is charged or what the expenses are charged out to the departments. And so this is for like your postage activity and office supply type activity that occurs there. Then item number 7, the last piece of information that we think on a high level is good for you to know and we like to share is the outstanding long-term obligations that the county has. And so the top couple lines, you see the general obligation debt. And so this is debt that is backed by your tax levy. And you'll see that that went up with the issuance of the 1.3 million in 2021. And so your overall balance is 2.9 million. And every county municipality in the state has a debt limit, and that's 5% of the equalized value in the county. And so you'll see the bottom lines there where it shows the 1.5% is what you're utilizing of your overall debt limit. So the 2.9 million is 1.5% of what you could truly have in overall debt. So very minimal amounts. And even with the 8 million that you issued this year, you're still going to be about 5% probably. And that's dependent upon how the equalized value changes as well. So the county average kind of falls between 0 to 20%. So you're well within the average. It's pretty low amount that you're utilizing there. So. And then the other couple of long-term obligations that we summarize here is that vested sick leave and vacation. So what your employees have earned as of 12/31/21 that will be paid out in the future as they use that vacation and sick leave. And so you'll see that we estimated it at about 978,000 in the non-highway activities and then about 140,000 in the highway activities. But one thing to remember there is in the general fund, I said you had about 660,000 actually set aside for such a purpose. So as those expenditures are incurred, you have some funding available for those. So those are, as I said, the key points and highlights that we feel are important for you to know as the governing body. So are there any other questions?
How do we compare to other counties around us?
Yeah, and I guess a couple of things that have come up is we're seeing what we saw with your results for the year are really similar in what we have seen as far as in a lot of places, the general fund did really increase the balance increase this year. Kind of what you saw too, just due to, maybe some decreased spending due to certain circumstances and factors, and then some additional revenues may be available as well. And then again, with where you're at with your unassigned fund balance is very similar to what we see at other counties. And then I would say the highway piece too is where, I've kind of seen that too, where the highway seems to be with minimal cash available at quite a few counties. And is in the same situation as kind of what you're seeing here as well. So, yeah, pretty similar situations and, no big red flags or anything that we see here compared to other counties that we're working with, so.
Good. Other questions from the committee? Mike, will you be able to get a copy of that to all the board members, please?
Sure can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike or Andy, you have anything to add?
I'm gonna touch on fund balance a little bit in our report.
Okay,
I
thank you.
think that's real kudos to the board and the previous finance director and I'm sure Mike's secretary or not. And Andy, what you've done and what Mr. Hawk did, give us that kind of result in 21. That's amazing.
Yes. Okay. No treasurer's report. Number 10, Waldo request.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give you a little background on this. Waldo, I'm sure you all are aware of what it is. In winter, they did apply for articles of incorporation on August 23rd of this year, so they're making progress that way. Some more background for outside organizations, our deadline we set for requests is July 31st. So they were a little bit after that. They in middle September was when the initial contact was made about wanting some money. I went back and forth a little bit. An initial budget was provided at the end of September. But it didn't have a final request. So I reached back out and so October 20th is when I got the actual request of $22,811. That was also the night of the budget hearing. So that had already been published and everything, but did not bring it up that night because I feel it was appropriate. So that's kind of where we're at. If the county chose to fund that request, it would cause a budget adjustment to put that in. Would not change taxes at all, but it would actually change something else. Either something would be reduced or we would just add that to the budget.
I believe since they requested in the local paper, they received a Main Street, there's a name for it, Main Street grant. Yeah, and they got $10,000 in that.
Yeah, they've been doing a lot of fundraising on their own. Some nice job.
Any concerns on, I mean, what I don't like is that after the deadline request. So I think that sets precedence if we accepted a request but we didn't honor everybody else's timeline, that's not necessarily a fair route.
I would agree with that.
Mr. Sleater.
This money. One of the time using you do have access to the right task.
Yes, we do.
I've got a breakdown of that. A lot of it is to hire a cook for their center. That was about $16,000.
For who's
A cook. A cook
No, for who's
for the Waldo Center.
For the center itself.
Yep.
So I would make a motion to deny the request just based on the deadline not being met for the request.
Second. That's okay.
So we have a denial of the request from Ms. Hessel and second by Mr. Sleater. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Hi, do you need us to use these for
No,
that?
not.
No, for that.
Roll call.
Okay, good, thank
You
you.
just want to use it.
Well, I was
It's a
like,
toy.
Opposed? Motion carries as a denial. Thank you. Number 11, analysis of the ambulance billing.
So I've got a little summary of that. It's something I need to dig much deeper into. We're about 6 months into my quest. They said it would take about a year to really catch up. We did not bill anything really from January through April in anticipation of changing the companies. And since May, so we've got 6 months of data, we are running a little bit behind. What I did is I compared that to the 3 previous years, took an average, compared it. And we're in the 90s, and it is increasing as we go, but we are still running a little bit behind. I looked at the aging schedule too, we have $518,000 out there. In billings that have not been received yet. To be honest, I don't think what we typically have on the aging schedule, I only kind of know what we from the point that came forward. Looking at the ambulance overall budget, because we are lagging behind, we're at about 76% of revenues right now. We should be at about 88.5, I guess, right now, but our expenses are at 76.7. So we're really, the net is kind of right on. So I'm not super concerned right now. I'd like to see the billings catch up. But we should be able to cash flow by the end of the year unless something changes.
How's communication with this new company, LifeQuest?
I don't have a lot of direct communication. Their platform is pretty nice. Like I can go in and run all kinds of reports and, from any given month, so I can see what the aging is for different months and where we're at for billings. Like I said, I just haven't been able to dig in enough to look at previous years to see what we bill versus what we receive versus what we're billing now versus what we receive. So that I can get done for next month. To a little deeper dig.
Yes.
Mike, is that 500,000 that's still outstanding? Is that part of that time frame when we didn't bill at all?
It's from 31 days on, so it would be both. There will be some since we.
But we're still actively trying to collect that money?
Yes.
Correct. And then what do we charge these outside counties that we provide ambulance service for? Do you have that number or do you know what that is?
We haven't changed that. I've heard there's been discussion about moving it away from the way we're doing it. Maybe if you have a little more information, I'd appreciate it, but.
Yeah, we looked at changing it. Right now it's based on per capita.
But Andy, how many years has it been the same? Because we increased our level in the ambulance, right? Up another notch to paramedics and
Yeah.
that, we increased it since that move. I hope.
It was increased a couple years ago. I don't know. So we can find it quickly.
Any other questions?
As soon as I find it, I'll let you know.
Okay. Well, keep us posted on that. Mr. Buckles, at Public Safety, did you guys get a report of the billing or anything for the ambulance?
Yeah.
If that could be shared here, that'd probably be beneficial also, I would think.
Shared.
Cool. So who took that charge after Nate Dunstan left?
Nate. First, after Nate, John Fruml.
John Brown.
Okay,
And he's brand new, right? Just hired.
Maybe we can get, do you want the monthly report from the
Well-
billing company or?
I don't care too much about the monthly report. I just want the bottom total lines at the end of the month, each month is what I'm after. To use that to compare what we had in the past, so we can continue to watch moving forward. We'd like to see it increase because we want it to balance the budget the best we can with it. That's all I'm after. Maybe we can get that for next month or something. Yes,
I guess along those lines, I just want residents in those 4 or 5 townships or latest 4 to be paid as much for their ambulances, at least as much for their ambulance service as the residents of the county are.
yes.
Because that's a very slow start.
I think Andy's working on that part if he hasn't already.
Not pulling it up as quick as I hope, but the way I can tell you that the formula is based off of, total cost around the ambulance divided by the population of Sarah County to come up with a per capita number. And then that's applied to the outside townships, the per capita amount is. Now, the discussion and the questions come up whether we should try to switch that to a based on valuation on per capita. Because that's how it's assessed. We don't charge townships in Sarah County on a per capita basis. We assess it to all the taxpayers based on their tax bill. So that's one conversation, and I didn't get it done this year in time. When I started talking about it, was past the contract deadline, but we would be expecting to put in new contracts for next year. Not for 2023, but for 2024.
Okay. What if that would be something that can be revisited 6 months later? Just to bring them up to speed. Instead of waiting a whole year for the contract?
Oh, no, yeah, no, we're not gonna wait 6 months to do it.
Okay. Anybody have any questions regarding the ambulance billing? Yes,
I just remember in the past, Chairman, Indian Health Service had a significant deficit too with the ambulance bill. And one reason was they weren't familiar with the billing, how they do for Indian Health Service and for a tribal member. So I think we should look into that too as well.
Yeah, we have,
I know the ambulance provided a great service to the tribe and reservation.
we have access to the aging schedule and who's, like, we've got the good thing with this company compared to the old one is, like Mike said, the platform is much better. So we can pull out like who's received the billing, who's delinquent, almost on a daily basis. We can pull it out. So we can take a look at that.
good. Anything else? Number 12, updated courtroom construction.
First from financial side, updated the Public Works Committee last night with these same numbers. Our total contract with Myron is 8.6 million. To date, just under 3.2 million has been billed. So there's 5.5 million outstanding on that. From a contingency fund standpoint, there was this owner's contingency is built into the project of 395,000. Current balance is down to 229,000. There's some additional change orders that came through yesterday during our progress meeting. So we'll be down about 200,000 or about half of the contingency fund left. In construction, they tell you that most of your contingency items are going to come up from the time you break ground until you get the building closed in. So hopefully that's true, because the building is pretty close to being closed in now. From a timeline standpoint, they still expect to turn the building over, the new construction, March 10th. So there's a lot of work to be done to finish the inside, but I think with the exception of the windows, the building is enclosed right now. There's a little hiccup with getting the roof shingled. They lost a contractor, so they're looking for a new firm to do the shingle work. Other than that, there's not too many surprises. All the concrete flat work inside the building should be done this week. There's just some exterior blacktop work they hope to get done this week. That might not happen. I mean, obviously the weather is not been good, and starting this weekend, the weather it's going to be awful cold to put blacktop down. Trying to think of anything else noteworthy. The AV equipment is all ordered, and as construction moves along, they're integrating where the utility drops are and making sure everything will work together. Office furniture is ordered. Those things are all expected to be on time. We do know, as far as the March 10th turnover date, there is one, the main service panel for the building is on back order, and the delivery date is right about the same day as they expect to have the rest of the building done. So that's kind of the one major piece that might not be here in time. Then there's some smaller items. There's a fire suppression tank that'll be delayed. For the IT area, you don't have water, you have like some type of tank with a chemical in it. That's not gonna be here by the March 10th deadline, but we'll have fire extinguishers available instead until that's delivered. But those are the only two items we know of that are behind schedule or outside of the timeline.
Yes,
Andy and CJCC, we talked about the new judge possibly being elected in April. And then we have to have the building up and running, or at least one courthouse running, right?
Right, the new courtroom at the March 10th deadline is when the new courtroom should be ready.
Yep.
That way
Are we
the,
on track for that?
yeah, but that's what they've told us. And if it's not, the new judge won't be up and running won't be elected until the spring election. Won't start till July 1. And based on what the current judge has said about, there'll be some judge training for a couple months until they're actually up and operating in their own courtroom. But yeah, once the new courtroom's ready, Judge Jacob will start working on that one, and then they'll start remodeling the old areas.
Because we talked at length about lowering the jail population when we have 2 courtrooms that we can address the pre-sentence incarcerations that are there now.
Yep.
So this is all tying together. We had a good discussion on that, so.
And I mean, from a finance standpoint, the other conversations I've had, I heard this when I was hired, and I thought that was probably not the truth, that there would be no additional operating costs to having the.
That was Mr. Tibbs.
that was a big discussion, what the expense would be for a new courtroom, and that's what it came across. They said they would, but we all know better than that.
Right, so, I mean, you already seen in the budget where we had to propose, at least at this point, increasing some just cleaning and utilities because of the additional space. But I think once you have a second judge in place, you'll hear more about staffing. I mean, we don't anticipate anything in the clerk of court's office. They believe, based on the conversations with the district court, that'll be fine, but judicial assistant, that type of thing is probably gonna be a conversation topic once the second judge is elected.
I'm sure the state will be kicking in their share for that.
I did, just further putting it into the atmosphere, at the county board convention and meetings I was in, I did bring that up, that it's kind of difficult when the state tells you need a second courtroom and you have to bond and pay for a second courtroom. Okay, we can debt service that, but it's going to take additional operating costs, but we get no additional levy cap to just maintain that second courtroom or staff it. So.
That was discussed when representatives voted for us to have that second judge also.
Right.
Yes.
And this is for Mike and Andy. When do we start using that ARPA money that we dedicated to the second courtroom versus the money that's in the bonds?
Actually, Mike's got that all set at the top of it. Today.
Oh, sorry. All right.
It's the ARPA money is, you made the motion resolution for is set aside to go towards that. But when we do the bond next year, Michael explained how that will play in.
Okay.
Any other questions regarding courtroom?
Just this
Yeah.
parking lot out here too will not be available until spring. That was part of the original timeline, was to have that piece done for parking.
So buy that second pair of boots to get through the snow.
Sure.
When will the outside brick be put on the building?
That should all be in process right now. I mean, some of it's, you see siding going up on parts of it.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, the exterior
Area
is
should go, okay.
done this fall, yeah.
Okay. Number 13, American Rescue Plan Act, 2000 funding.
Money is set aside towards the building project. April mentioned it during her audit presentation that some of that money was spent last year. Some of the money that's been allocated has gone out to a couple of the bus this year and the Mosaic grant from last year and the housing authority money. But the other broadband projects have not started, so those funds haven't been dispersed yet. So those are still sitting in our account as well.
We've actually spent just over $1,031,000. The rest of it is committed, with the exception of about 54,000 is left. Being uncommitted.
It's committed to the courtroom.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, the other projects Andy mentioned too.
Number 14, state trust fund loan resolution discussion, possible action.
So this just came in, last. So at the last month's, board meeting, you approved the purchase of, approximately 80 acres of land, within our county forest, to be funded by a state trust fund loan. So this is, we have the application packet that came, and this would authorizing resolution is necessary to go with the application to get those funds. So this authorizes the application for 320,000 and a 10-year note at a rate of 5.25%. That would, this would go through the board meeting next week. And then we have the funds in December to close that acquisition. When Mike does his finance update, he'll talk about, well, this is a short, we're anticipating this to be a short-term loan because when we do the bond issue next year, bond council is recommending that we roll this, pay this off and roll this into the bond issue.
This is the Cooper property.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Andy, we're gonna roll this in with the 24 then, short term.
That's where, that's what the recommendation is, yeah.
Along with other capital projects
Yep.
in 24 as well, right? Because there's no capital projects for 23.
There is,
There are, it's not borrowing in December, that'll be rolled in, March.
and yeah, Michael explained, but the recommendation is to actually do a 2-year capital improvement bond as well as this. Because when you do a bond issue on a, small ones cost as much as big ones do. So you proposing to do it all together so that it lowers the, spreads out the administrative cost of doing the bond issue.
What's the wishes of the committee?
Make a motion to authorize an application for 320,000 state fund trust loan.
And I'll second it.
Motion by Ms. Cecil, second by Mr. Duffy to approve. Any further discussion? Yes,
Just go on to the full county board.
yes, on Tuesday night.
This isn't a roll call vote, is it?
I think it should be, it's borrowed
Okay.
money.
Well, I guess. we could
Okay.
make it-
More money than I have in my account, so yes.
No, at the county board meeting, it has to be a roll call vote.
Okay,
Okay.
well, that's good to know.
And I was prepared for it, so I've got it here. Go ahead and grab your clippers. Yes is a green and red is no, yellow for abstain. It's voting is open.
Signature copy.
Yep, right here. Closing the vote now and the motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. We'll pass this around, Stacy, please. Thank you. We have item 15 and 16. Is there a reason they're in that order or can we reverse them?
Yeah, you can do. Probably one.
So let's go to 16, then we can do 15 at the end. That way the audio audience can just stay if they wish. So we'll do the 2023 budget update. Mike, is this something you want to handle?
Yeah, we just have a couple of things to mention that are changes from the budget hearing presentation on October 20th. The first one, that $10,000 proposed reduction of Hayward Library was a little confusing how I had it on that sheet with all of the other reductions. I tried to make it easier that way. I can see it was confusing. What I've done, if you look through the presentation that I've attached to the agenda, I did move it up above that then, so it's separated from what would be the graph from fund balance. The second thing, a little more clarification on property and casualty insurance. We talked about that being an exemption to levy limit calculation. It is done in a very similar vehicle to the CIP, the capital improvement plan. So that would also be a short-term borrowing. just to allow it to be outside of the revenue limit. And then I do want to talk a little bit about the debt service. So I believe last spring, maybe it was even last winter. Brian Della was up here to present the debt service model for many years old. And what he had included in March of 2023 was a debt issue of $2.7 million. And that was intended to be the remainder of the courthouse and CIP borrowing for 2023. So if I take that in July, the county board designated the remaining ARPA funds of 1.39 million to go towards the courthouse. So if I take those two together, that gives us $4,090,000 in available funding. The anticipated remaining costs of the courthouse, about the 8 million that's already been issued, are about $2 million. The 23 CIP is 1,367. Property and casualty insurance is 250,000, and this property acquisition that we just approved is 320,000. That's if we roll that into the March issue. That comes to $3,937,000, which falls under the $4,090,000 we have available. So all those things can happen without changing anything that Brian presented to you guys already. And you did mention one thing, other thing Brian is recommending is that we also do the 2024 CIPs, and not that March issue, March 22 issue for 23. Again, just to reduce closing costs, definitely other costs and more to be versus the. So that would put the bond to probably 4 million. But it's not, again, it's not going to change anything that we were planning on doing. It's just pushing that forward into March instead of waiting until December, which has been done in the past. You know, one thing to.
So did you estimate the 24 CIP?
I think we could probably give it to the Dana folks.
Still.
Yeah, so we already have, when they give us a CIP request for the next year, we have to do the 5-year projection. A lot of the stuff is already in the plan. There might be something that comes out, but we would put it out sooner, see if they can give us a little bit of that. Otherwise, we'll deal with that later if we have to. If something came up later, I suppose we could push it into the plan.
Yes, the goal of the CIP is to have a kind of balanced throughout the years, so they're always issuing that debt revolving. Just, it brings to mind the conversation we had last night at Public Works, that Gary and Highway has been successful in getting grant funding for 2 new projects through the bill, the bipartisan infrastructure. There's additional money coming in to all the states for road projects, and so he did apply for a couple. They've been tentatively approved. They're 80-20 splits, so you have to spend 20 cents to get 80 cents on for every dollar. There's more money coming out, and so the committee, he brought it to the committee and basically told him to go ahead and continue to try to get that money, which would probably be outside of, that would really expand our capital improvement program with those additional projects, but you're not going to see 80-20 money very often. So I mean, if he's successful, then that would be something that would come back to figure out how to fit that in. That would be beyond our capital plan that we've outlaid.
And that was for bridges. Most of it's all for bridges, and bridges is not in the regular levy limit, so. We told him to proceed. He's got approximately 35 days left, and he's got the knowledge to do it, so go get all the money you possibly can. So that'll come back to Public Works, and if anything gets forward, it'll come back to finance also. Yes,
How much money might that be?
well, presently, we just interviewed the first of this month for 3 jobs. One job was on E, and then there was 2 bridges, one bridge on C and one bridge on D. That are 80-20 splits. Then projects will do engineering in 2023, and the work is going to be done between 2024 through 2027. But there's more projects out there that Gary's aware of. That last night we told him, as long as you're aware of it and the money's out there, apply for the grants and see if you can get them. Does that help a little bit?
And if we went with Brian's recommendation, that would be a 10-year issue. So then I'm just gonna bring this up and we'll decide later, but it may make sense to maybe flip some of the ARPA money with issue. Because typically I wouldn't want to issue 10-year debt on something that we may not have in 10 years anymore. The courthouse will have, so it's just something to consider. It really doesn't matter in the end, I guess, the money is the same. But practically speaking, I'd probably rather issue that for something we don't have for a longer term. Any questions on that issue, CIP? Insurance in the debt issue.
And then just to comment on that, why it's a subtle change, but when you're issuing the debt, the buyers of the debt, we prefer to see it's on a long-term asset that you're not financing.
Bricks and mortar.
Yeah. They see that you're financing things that don't have a life expectancy, they're gonna be concerned that the financials aren't, we're not financially stable. We're borrowing money to make it year to year. So it's just a subtle thing that when we make that statement on for borrowing, we're gonna want to consider that.
Okay,
And this is only a 1-year thing, with combining all those into one issue, that's where we're running into that. This typically, our CIP is only gonna be 1 or 2 years. But doing it this way, and it makes sense financially, but we may want to consider that, so that it makes more sense with the debt issue that it's for a longer term asset.
And like it kind of levels off that shock aspect of the tax rate, right? And keep them at the same level, which is the.
Yeah, that's the plan is,
Yeah,
our long-term goal is to get the CIP where it's not even over 2 years. We're borrowing it and paying it off. Just going through that vehicle, so we're utilizing the levy exemption that's available to us. Okay, I was gonna talk about fund balance a little bit. You'll notice that unassigned balance was different than what I had presented at the budget hearing, and there's really 2 reasons for that. The first one, the 22 budget, and she touched on this a little bit, included 1.29 million of fund balance applied. Almost all of that, all except for 15,000 of that is designated towards HHS, which is designated towards placements. So, just my limited knowledge, it looks like that's really increased over the past few years, or have increased pretty rapidly, which drew down HHS fund balance, which required a little bit of a contribution this year. What we're seeing is our placements are actually down this year from previous years, which is a good thing. I think some of the things we're doing locally is probably helping with that. I don't know, not an expert. But so that's part of that, why it's different. And then the second one is, which I just became aware of yesterday, but that resolution from May, the 1.3 to HHS and the 300,000 to the resource development. So when I look at what I proposed at the budget hearing, the 1.68 fund balance drop, out of that, almost just under 1.4 is HHS for placements. So that leaves just less than 300,000 that are actually outside of that. So when I look at fund balance, we've got that 1.3 that we targeted towards HHS this year. I looked at HHS budget yesterday against actual projected at the end of the year. We're gonna dip into that very little, if any, that 1.3. So that plus the 1.3 that's already been moved over to HHS would really doubly protected against that just under 1.4 million that's in the budget for 2023. So even though it looks like our unassigned is way down, and it is, what we're going to use the fund balance for is actually already in there. So except for the 300,000, which could be the potential real drop in fund balance.
and 1.3 came from our surplus from the previous year.
That's the $3 million surplus. Yeah. So is that clear to everybody then?
When would we ever consider borrowing for all the county placements? Isn't that a
That's
possibility?
the fixed levy limit exemption that we,
Yeah.
that's available and we have not used that.
Right.
So if things got tougher, that could be something that we look at.
At the same time, if we can still afford to pay it, it's better than borrowing the money.
Yes.
So what we're, like I mentioned at the budget here, we budget revenue, conservatively budget expenses liberally. One of them that we really budget high because it can kill you was those other county placements. Because they're $2,000 a bit of a thing. So if you have a couple of those, I can really budget. We put that safeguard in, and that safeguard is, like I said, covered really doubly because we're going to carry over that fund balance of time. And we use it again at 1.2. The board did designate to HHS.
And Andy, we presented a resolution to Wisconsin County's interested in this, right? What traction have we got with that?
No traction because the legislature hasn't been working since.
They've been
We
in
did that.
recess.
Yeah.
Yeah. But our resolution talks about that.
Yeah, and that's part of the counties association. I mean, our resolution is now part of the county association
That
platform.
was approved.
Yep, and our resolution was really about, well, went to the heart of out of county placements and that we want the CSP program to look more like CCS, which would increase the reimbursements from the states. There are just in my discussions with their counties, there's one other county in the area, it's a neighbor of ours that's, I don't know if it's in this project, but they're definitely moving in the direction of borrowing for out of county placements. Along with insurance like we're doing. And I'm not aware of any other counties that have done that yet, but they're coming up with a way to do that just to free up some room in their budget.
So those are really the only updates I have on the budget. Aside from what was presented at the meeting.
Do we want to look at the full budget as in for the Haywood Library? And or the Nabocog Transit?
Sorry, what was the question?
Do we want to look at the budget for the Hayward Library and or Nabocog Transit?
Just those two or all of it?
Well, all of them,
All of
but
them.
them are the people that are here. What's the wishes of the committee? Yes,
For the library. I think there was some miscommunication somewhere along the lines about if this anonymous donor continued with 10,000, we would oblige by 10,000.
that was a one-year thing. I understood.
Only a 1 year thing.
That was my understanding as well, when it was presented during our, during the proposed, I mean, we were voting on the budget, and then that was brought at the 11th hour, so there was nothing in writing, it was just that was to get through that budget vote at last
So
year.
that- So, and that did not include the additional, any additional $10,000 match.
That's my understanding of the vote last year, yes.
We know, and there is no donor going to make a $10,000 contribution if county would match it this year.
And that was talked about by Molly. I don't feel I'm responsible to talk about that if you're asking me.
I was asking a question, not necessarily pointing to anybody, but
Okay.
Molly,
Want Molly to answer that?
please.
Molly, can you step forward, please?
Yes, I did explain it on the sheet that I handed out, and I have to get mine back out. On that first sheet with the numbers. So basically, what happened when it was mea culpa, I totally misunderstood the people who made the matching donation last year. And I talked to them and found that they meant it as a one-time thing. But amazingly, a short time after that, a former library board president and his wife came to me and offered $20,000 to offset my fear of not being able to make it through next year. So in a way, that the point of us not having a match is moot now. But these figures explain how we still are ending up with a $20,000 shortfall in revenues. And that is why the 10,000, if you would be able to replace it, would go a long way in helping us. And we'll just have to add to the amount that we have to raise ourselves as a library. Does that help at all?
And Molly, if we don't make that gift, then you will close down one day a week.
Yeah, and as Ann explained, we'll have to close down because it covers, we usually have 4 of us, 5 of us.
There's 3 clerks there.
3 clerks. So we would have to close down 1 day a week in order to cover that loss of $10,000. Clerks usually work a couple days a week for $15 an hour. So that, and you know, our another fear is that we have to stop handing out these items that we talked about at the Economic Development Committee meeting. And that and the Story Walk on the Nature Trail are 2 of our most popular items, but they're expensive.
Yes.
So I just want to go on record saying I support the library. All my questions are never in non-support for the library. I love the library. But why are you not operating on the formula rate instead of the extra amount? So the formula rate is 122 something, but we give 200,000 a year. So we give that 70,000 extra. There's not a lot of places we give that to. So when I look at our whole budget, there's no other requests being made for $70,000 more. Now you're asking not for 70, but for 80. So, and I'm sure the rest of the board is getting bombarded with the fact that by the supporters that we're not supporting if we don't give that 80 instead of 70. So my question is, could you consider, please, operating on that formula rate so that the library does not count on the county funds and make that as your resource? Because then every year it's going to be a request for more and more and more. And when is it enough before the county is considered supporting the library? So my request would just be that you go with the formula rate, operated on that. Anything else is a gratuity. I mean, that should be considered, I guess.
Okay, I have a multi-part answer to that, if I may. I did point out that originally, it was in the director's report that I handed out at the economic meeting, that we were funded, Winter and Hayward were funded by Sawyer County before there was any Act 420, which required a minimum amount. And Act 420 only states the minimum. Other counties do pay more than the minimum. However, also other public libraries besides Winter and us are paid some of their wage or their payments come from their municipality. Act 420 was created because public libraries weren't able to make it just on money from their municipality. So since Sawyer County started funding us ahead of that minimum requirement, they had already gone above and beyond what Act 420 ended up offering. So in the effort to continue library services at the point that we had grown to, both libraries, the county opted not to reduce the funding to that amount. And there is going to be a line where we do not ask for more money every year, and that's why we created the Hayward Library Foundation. And what we counted on, and I did write a letter to Andy and Mike that explained this, is that we had anticipated within 5 years that the county or the HLF would be able to fund us at around $25,000 a year. And they went up to $19,000 the last 2 years, again, because they invest their money, part of their money. You know, their endowment took a hit, and next year it's going down 5,000. But eventually, the whole reason that we created the foundation is to try to take some of the burden off of the county. And we still aim to get there. I have a really great group of people who are very good with finances on that team.
So then the second question, how do you calculate that the $10,000 of not, if we don't give the $10,000 that you have to close one day a week for the whole year?
Because of
extra
the
day.
cost of wages for the staff who would have to work that day. That's one of the main things.
So do you still have a reserve from COVID when people weren't there, when you were closed for the year?
No, because nearly every staff member worked from home. We still ended up doing a lot of things. Some of us went into the library. I must admit, I went in when the Department of Public Instruction said I should not, but I was taking canned goods and other non-perishable foods in boxes of books and putting them at the front door. We still had the nature trail. We were still trying to offer services. And administrative work doesn't stop even during COVID. Ann and I worked from our homes the same hours we worked at the library.
I'm gonna add with that, last month, Mr. Schuman and Mr. Betcher asked me, how did that funds get so high? And in the years past, there was quite a few board members that were probably on the library board and or supporting the library, and they had a big push for the whole county board to support for more. And that's where a lot of the funding came to also. I should have shared that last month, but I didn't think of it. Yes.
Can I ask you-
I have a comment, I think it's difficult, I think it's difficult for, like a lot of difficult things you did before, it becomes a lot of passion and feeling. Which I think sometimes needs to be separated. Times are tough. I guess I'm addressing both the library and the transit. Fees are going up, for everybody in this room, everybody in this county, and that's who we represent. Not everybody utilizes the services of these two entities. So we have to safeguard that. And to a degree, this is somewhat symbolic, I guess, because it's become funny money. Some 10 grand, 35 grand. Does it seem like a lot? Depends how you view it. If you're talking about me personally, it seems like a lot out of my pocket. If you're talking about a big budget here, it doesn't seem like much. Times are tough. I often, maybe it's easier for transit and library, I don't know, but some of these special services for the library, I'm one that the drive-through charge a small fee. I don't know if you can ask your customers for a larger fee. I'm in private business. We're going through the same thing with all of our customers right now. I have to ask those customers for more money. They will decide whether they're going to pay me or not. One big swoop just for the county. I think we need to, as a principle, protect the county. Everybody's having a tough time. So I'm for keeping these numbers where they're at. So that's just a comment.
Is our purpose today to agree to the budget to send on to the county board for next week?
That is correct. Last
Okay.
month, as a full board, administration gave the budget to the county board. Make your discussions, do what you want, and bring it back in November at the board meeting to approve. And this is the step to get Mr. Schuman.
Which is 5 days away.
Right.
We're gonna approve this thing.
Right.
And our finance director, Andy, had put this together for us, and we've had many times to kick it. I think we got it.
So can I interject can I be a pain? So I like the budget the way it is. I would propose that we keep it, but instead of giving the Sawyer County Fair 47,000, I would like to reduce that to 45,000 and give the extra 2,000 to the Sawyer County Historical Society and get them put back on the county books. We have not given to the Sawyer County Historical Society since 2015, and nobody can tell me why. And they have not come and asked. So that's where I'm kind of at an impasse that nobody can tell me why we haven't given. I've been asked by the Sawyer County Historical Society why, but I don't I'm just saying the fair, if we reduce them because they didn't request the additional 45,000 is what would be granted, but that additional $2,000 be given to the Historical Society. That's my only motion of amendment to this budget.
Just a minute, just a minute, just a minute. Karen wanted a chance to speak. We let Molly speak, so let's let Karen
Oh,
have
I'm
a chance to
sorry.
speak.
Thank you.
Just for,
Karen, would you speak up, or would you step up to the mic, please?
we do have a fair increase, and I did go over that at the public hearing at the board, at your board meeting. As of January 1, we have a fair increase coming in place for all our riders. So we have done that and we are implementing it. And so far to date, as of the end of October, we have done over 43,000 trips just this year alone. That's a lot of folks going to work and going places. And something I forgot earlier when I talked about that COVID funding, it was that everything we do, we have to get reimbursed for. We put out and we get reimbursed. So I had that opportunity to put in the solar panels to help reduce. So I reached up, grabbed that funds. If I hadn't done that, we wouldn't have gotten anything. It would have gone to
How
some of
much
their
more
entities.
would the bears go up to meet the 25?
But we put that into our budgets. So with a fair increase, which actually is double-edged swords to us, because as we increase fares, people go, oh, I won't ride the bus. But after a period of time, when they can't get to their appointments or their jobs, they hopefully will come back. So we've done the formula for that and included in our budget, and our budget still needs 25,000 more to meet our local match requirement.
Do you have any idea of how much you have to raise them to hit that point? Because the fares themselves, I don't recall what they were. I thought they still were minimal.
They were
Very
very
cheap.
low. They were $1.
Okay.
Yep.
If you double or triple them, they're still somewhat reasonable. Where would that, how high did they have to be to hit the 25K?
With our fare increase, we're anticipating that'll go up about 40,000 per year. So we're already doing that, but hopefully gonna pull in 40,000 more with our fare increase. If our ridership stays where it's at, which we're hoping. It's very hard when you do a
No, I
fare.
mean, the fees look very, even with the increase, looks almost giveaways to me.
They're over double. It'll be
I know percentage wise, but
Yep.
still a dollar value than they were, you know.
we have two
I mean,
services.
if you had to cover the 25K to raising the fees, would that be now you're charging the $20 a ride? I mean, how bad is it yet?
Well, our fees will be going up to $3 and $4 where they were $1 and $2. They're gonna double. And the difference is when we take in $1 from fare, it's $1. But as you talked about, Gary had 80/20s. That's what ours is similar to that. Ours is leveraged. For every $1 I take in, I get this amount instead of just $1. And so it's a bigger scale to us. So it's hard to compare $1 in fares
So if you
to
charge 5, you'll get 10.
from. It's $1 per dollar. I'd like to be able to have you come up and see the books and see how it's structured where we
Yeah,
have
I
that.
appreciate the challenges. I just think every citizen of the county is going through this,
Oh, I
and
know.
everybody's using the transit, so. I'm just trying to look at the bigger.
So, I mean, we're gonna have to reduce services. Just come into that.
So can you tell me, so your rate was $1 and it's going up to 3, is that correct?
On
And
our demand response, yes, we
And-
have,
how far do they get for that money? I mean, so do they get picked up and dropped back off for that $3, or is it just a one time? How does that actually work? When
every time you board the bus, you would pay that fee.
Okay,
So if they come from somewhere around Lake or so to come into town to go to Walmart, there's $3 for them. Actually, that's the elderly disabled fare. For our doorstep, it'll be $4 if they're non-elderly or disabled. And so they'd go to Walmart, be on $4, say they went to Marketplace or something on the way back, there's another $4 and then $4 home.
So they can
So-
travel anywhere in Sawyer County for that fee, though, is what I'm asking.
Almost, I mean, there's certain areas of the county we don't hit a lot. But for all the places we do serve, it'd be $4 every time they got on. If they're elderly or disabled, which elderly in our community is 55, then they'll get a $3 fare for that. And those are the ones that are not on our regular, think of our regular routes where we go from Hayward out to LCO, converge there, and they swap and go down to Northwood Beach or wherever, they can transfer there. If they're on one of those transferring routes, the regular, as they call the shuttle routes, which are deviated fixed route, those fares are still there. Those fares are doubling as well. But our demand response is outside of our regular route buses. Someone in Round Lake or somebody over in Nelson Lake area, anywhere outside of the main drag per se.
Okay, thank
So they're going up substantially. So.
Mr. Schuman, did you have something?
Oh. Well, I guess I just want to straighten the record that Surrey County Fair did request an increase and they requested 50,000. And Mike, I think you gave them 47. And Transit is getting 5,000 more. They requested 25, but they are getting 5,000.
So my comment's still on the table with it.
Okay, yes, it is. Mr. Streeter.
It was quite a while ago. Finance committee. Was dealing with the. What you were talking about.
Historical.
The Historical Society.
Society. And they had a chunk of it in the bank. By thousands. And we said, we're not gonna give you. We've been sitting there for a long, long time. We're not gonna give you any money until you start using your own money. For your budget. Never heard from them again. That's how that happens to the best of my recollection.
Because they've been doing fundraisers and so there's obviously a need there. So that was what I wanted to bring to attention. Because that houses all of our history. So whether it's operational cost or not, that's, and I just opened a can of worms, so I can just backtrack.
No,
Said no.
That's why I'm on the board. I like to keep it sassy.
Stacy, what you bring forward is you're entitled to just as much as anybody else. Don't feel like you're not. Mr. Schuman.
Did the Historical Society make their request? We voted that.
The Historical Society.
They did make it.
I'm speaking on their behalf only because I've been trying to get answers of why they were taken off our books since 2015. It's not the Hayward Historical Society, it's the Sawyer County Historical Society. So that is just as important as any of these other entities asking for funds. I don't think that it's run by volunteers. I don't think the volunteers are at the position where they feel comfortable. They haven't even been to our economic development to give a report because they don't feel comfortable with the board. This would be my caveat to say, we appreciate you. Please come and know that you're part of the
Are they
community.
struggling?
They just did a huge fundraiser. One of the high school youth did a fundraiser on their behalf. I know that there's efforts made there. They have nothing that you can get digitally. Like if you're in another town, you have to physically go into the location. It would be really nice if they have updates. I just think of with everything that is moving forward in society, it would be really nice to help the Historical Society, get out of their basement per se.
The only point is, again, I'm talking principle here, would be to encourage somebody to be asking for government money. If they can make it on their own, then we're all part of volunteer organizations. We know what it's like when you have to raise money and you make a go of it. I don't know, that's be my discomfort with it.
Right, and that's why I had spoke with the president of the fair, and he was happy and encouraged with the money that they're getting, and that's why I thought, well, instead of instead of, I mean, it's $2,000. The fair is a great entity as well, but to just have that caveat to say, are you okay with getting $45,000, which, and this is hearsay because he's not here, but Mr. Christensen on Monday at the economic development meeting, he's the president of the fair, said, yes, they were very happy to get any money from the Sawyer County budget. And so I said, well, I'm going to make this proposal. And he encouraged, because everybody wants the history to remain in Sawyer County. So I know it was an issue, LCO and the Historical Society were going to work hand in hand at one point when I first got on this board. That was dropped. So I'm just thinking of making it, putting it to light, and it can definitely wait until next year's budget conversation. I just wanted to bring it to attention that that was part of our budget. It is named Sawyer County Historical Society. If there was room to add even that caveat of, you know, I think that would be a good communication effort, I guess.
Thank you. So I guess my recommendation is ask them to make sure they apply in July next year.
Do they receive the packet?
Probably not.
They're still, the Jim is still on my email list, so he gets all my emails for the
But
econ.
so is that the right person that it's supposed to go to?
I
Because
don't
Jim
know.
is also very elderly
They
and
have to
hasn't.
tell us who to put on there.
So that, right, and based on the volunteer, yeah, there's not a paid position there. That's a
So they need to
hard
get us a
scoop.
name if they want someone different on the list.
Perfect.
Casey. He does all the mailing, is Casey.
Yeah, and she's the one I spoke to asking why, and she wasn't aware, and I don't think that he's doing a good job communicating. So that is something that I'll strike until we're finished with this year's budget and revisit.
Yes.
Just to answer your question, we only really reach out to the entities we already have funding relationships with. We
And
don't-
that's why I was trying to bring it back to have a relationship with them. But I know, I don't know.
we're not gonna, we're discouraged throwing out a ad saying.
Right. It would not go over well with anybody, but
Thank you, Stacy.
you're welcome.
So we have the budget. So we're gonna make any adjustments? We're gonna make a motion to approve the way it is. What are we gonna do? Yes,
Mr.
Molly.
Chair, may I respond to a few things that John had mentioned just really quickly? First of all, we are not a business, we're a public library. So the money that comes in is spent, it just goes right back into the library. And we are not allowed by the State Department of Public Instruction Division for Libraries to charge for what they consider to be basic library services, other than something like a photocopy, you know, small things like that. No, not everyone uses the library, but not everyone uses the other actual departments in Sawyer County. And the library happens to be the only entity I'm aware of that anyone can use. There are no prerequisites, and we help people use computers. We help people figure out what their oh, I can't remember what you call it, and with the like what their rating is.
Oh, well, we've helped people apply for passports, we've helped people unemployment,
Because everything's computerized now, and it's very difficult we have a lot of senior citizens, including me, but everything is difficult for people now because it's all computerized and they don't all have them. And I do apologize if my passion for my library work comes through, if it offends someone. But it's because I really do have a desire to help our community, and that's why we're there. And I always thought that was a positive point in someone's position, so thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Yes.
I would like to make the motion to adopt the 2023 Sawyer County budget as presented without change.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Mr. Righeimer to approve the budget as presented and pass it on to the full board on Tuesday night to the full county board. Roll call vote.
You get to use that clicker.
Clicker.
Get your clicker out.
Councilman ready, man.
I will. Ready to vote. Passed unanimously.
Also like to commend our accountant and administrator for doing an excellent job putting together. And I also like to thank all the people in the audience that came to take time to, on their day, to present what they did present for us. Thank you. I believe the next item we have is to go into closed session. I apologize to the administrative committee for overrunning a little bit, but I'm not sure it can be helped. So we need to go into closed session pursuant Wisconsin statute 19.851E, deliberating and negotiating the purchase of the public property or investing public funds or conducting other specific public business. Whatever competition of the bargaining reason requires a closed session. In addition, the committee will be discussing collective bargaining strategy, thus the extent of the open session requirements under 19.821.
A motion is made by.
Me.
Second by Mr. Sleater, motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Ms. Don't shut it yet. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Again, so we'll have a lot on the agenda for finance next month. Thank you for your valuable time. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. everybody.
Right, so no surprises Tuesday.
Oh, sure. I would, okay. Thank you.
Have a good day, guys.
See you, Stacy.
So. What do I need to do?
No, in July, they need to fill out an application.
Thank you.
Funding.
And they would go see the-
And Mike can mail it to them, or Mike can give them an address.
I'll take it over here.
All right. I will-
I'll be with you.